Welcome to Salisbury University on the Air, a program highlighting the activities and the people of the campus. My name is Susan Purnell. When Clarkston, Georgia was designated as a refugee settlement center in the 1990s, the sudden population influx breathed a new life into the fading town. The community struggled to accommodate its newest residents, and the refugees struggled too. Clarkston became the first American home for immigrants from varying backgrounds and cultures fleeing from war zones around the world, including Liberia, Sudan, and Iraq. Their one thing in common: soccer. Seeking to pull together the refugees and the town, Luma Mufla, an American-educated Jordanian woman, formed a youth soccer team, immediately inheriting a family of 120 children and their relatives. Sports journalist Warren St. John told the inspiring true story of the team and its unforgettable first season in the 2009 national bestseller, Outcasts United, an American town, a refugee team, and one woman's quest to make a difference. This year's Salisbury University New Student Reader. So with us today is Dr. Adam Wood, SU English Department Chair and New Student Reader Committee Co-Chair, to tell us more about it. Dr. Wood, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So glad to have you here today.
Thank you.
So before we begin talking about this year's selection, which I briefly talked about, how many years has SU hosted this new student reader program?
The program began in 2005, so this is our 11th year with the program, although this is only going into my second year as the co-chair.
And what was the idea behind it?
The idea behind it is to sort of have first-year students sort of finding a way to integrate them into the academic community here at SU. To share a reading that theoretically at least all of the freshmen are doing, a number of the faculty and the staff and administration are reading, as well as some of the upperclassmen, to sort of involve them into the community. In short, though, a lot of it is a matter of sort of teaching them how we do work at a university, right? Unfortunately, a lot of students, when they come to a university, aren't really aware of how we do intellectual or academic work. And so the idea of this is to have them share this reading and then come together where we can teach them some of the historical and cultural contextualization around the book, but also sort of teach them how to think critically, how to read closely, how to engage in discourse and debate that is rigorous and intellectual, but that is still always aware and respectful of sort of differing ideas of others. And so it's in some ways sort of a crash course into how we do work in universities.
That's interesting. Do you think it's achieved its goal?
I would like to think so, and I think it's something that we really strive for with each and every book. The books are often very different, and we're always sort of tinkering and rethinking our approach to the book choices, to the kinds of questions that we're asking students to think about as they're reading. But I do think that it's largely been very successful. It's sort of a tricky thing, though, in terms of books that we choose. We have to, on the one hand, find a book that is academically and intellectually rigorous, but is also something that's readable for these first-year students, and also that's not too long. You think Tolstoy's War and Peace might be a magnificent book that still has relevance in contemporary America, but the idea of reading a 1,000-page book over the summer and sort of having to talk about it would be sort of tricky.
It would be a little off-putting.
Yeah, I think so. But again, I think we've been very successful, and again, are always trying to make the program even stronger.
What are some of the other books that have been chosen in the past?
Historically, the committees typically used the memoir, and so we can think of The Glass Castle is one. We also had John Krakauer's Into Thin Air. There was another one, one of the best ones that I've seen is called Picking Cotton. That was a co-written memoir by a woman who was the victim of a terrible crime, and the African-American man that she mistakenly identified and was found guilty. She subsequently discovered that he was not the one, and so it's a great story about sort of social justice and racial inequality in America, and it was such a powerful text that we actually used it 2 years in a row. So even though the memoir has classically been the form, the committee is really open to any kind of book that we think would sort of be able to bring students into that kind of critical and academic engagement. And so I think moving into the future, we'll perhaps start to see some different kinds of books showing up. Anything that we think will do the trick is what we're open to.
So let's talk a little bit about the one that is being read right now, Outcasts United by Warrant St. John. Tell me a little bit more about it than what we talked about already.
Well, I mean, I think your summary really gets well to the events of the book. But one of the things that I think the book is really sort of trying to bring our attention to, and that the committee really wanted the students to focus on with the discussion questions and prompts that we gave them, is the idea or the image of the refugee. I don't think it's surprising to anyone to say that immigrants and refugees are very prominent fixtures on the contemporary political landscape.
Oh, they certainly are.
And, unfortunately, there are some who choose to portray them in sort of a very negative light, a sort of a light that seems to incite a sort of very distinct American anxiety about immigrants at best, and unfortunately to incite hatred of immigrants at the worst. And I think one of the other issues is that the media and sort of what they do, they tend to, grab onto a particularly negative story and play it to death. But that's not the reality for the vast, vast majority of immigrants who are coming to America. They're not coming to America to bring chaos and violence. They're coming to America to escape chaos and violence.
And the kinds of violence that they are escaping, I'm halfway through the book, is really unthinkable to most Americans.
It really is. It really is. I mean, it's unspeakable when we think about notions of thousands and tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of individuals sort of being slaughtered, right?
Yeah.
We think about the oppressive regimes that they're trying to escape. And so, this unfortunate, fearful, frightened idea that they're coming here to ruin America is just simply absurd in a lot of ways. They're coming to find peace. They're trying to find a place to belong. They're trying to find a place to thrive,
and to be able to live.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
I mean, really, they're fighting for their lives.
Yeah. To not fear, being killed at any moment. And so one of the things that I think the book really does well is to bring our attention to remind us that refugees are not some monolithic group to be feared, but rather they are all individuals with their own hopes and dreams, their abilities and skills, and that if we remember to think of refugees as individual human beings, then we can move away from the really problematic notions that cause that American anxiety. To see them as individuals, to see them as humans, and to grant them our respect for the humanity that they're bringing to America.
Correct. I was amazed at all of the different countries represented by the Refugees, which is the team, the
Right.
soccer team that is formed. It's amazing to me how I didn't realize all of those countries had the terrible things going on that they did.
Yeah.
Like we were talking earlier, in the Congo in 1990, I believe it was, they lost 5.4 million people.
Yeah.
Well, of course you want to escape from that. I mean, you don't want to be 5.4 million and one. And all of these people from Liberia and Jordan and the Congo, Ethiopia, all came to this one little town in Georgia and had to learn to live together.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And and again, I think that this is part of the unfortunate thing that the stories that we see so often are only about a very small, select group from a particular country or region. And when that's the kind of story that's really being pushed, it's very easy to forget about the the traumatic history in any number of other places. And that you're right. I mean, that these refugees are coming from all across the globe, and that very often they come to America for a very specific reason, because they know that this is ideally at least a place where they can embrace freedom, where they can live their lives, where they can work and believe how they want to believe, and again really thrive, and like we said, not fear for their lives every moment.
And that's sort of the basis on which our country was formed.
Very much so.
And sometimes I think we tend to get away from that thought.
I agree. I mean, we think about what's on the Statue of Liberty,
Right.
the sort of give me you're tired, you're poor, you're hungry.
Right.
And that the idea of accepting refugees is in some ways one of the most fundamental of American concepts.
It really
I believe.
is. It really is. Well, I am really enjoying the book, and I know the students will too. Mr. St. John, the author, is apparently coming here to the campus,
He is,
right?
yes.
And is he going to talk with the community as well as the students?
Yes, there's a community event that will be held Purdue Hall 156 on August 25th from 7 to 8 p.m. He'll be giving sort of a public talk, and then there'll be time for question, answer, sort of an open discussion.
And that program is free to the public, is
It
that
is.
right?
Anyone who's interested is free to attend.
Now, I would suggest, and I think you would too, that the public maybe picks up the book and reads it before coming, because it is really, you have to read it to get involved in the discussion, I believe.
I agree. I think it's always best to read a work before you go to a discussion about it. So if there are any incoming freshmen watching this, I would certainly say that's one of the best first pieces of advice for going to the university.
Absolutely. I got my book on Amazon. Is there another place local where you think there are some copies?
Yeah, there are copies in the campus bookstore, and there are
Okay.
also copies at the local Barnes & Noble, and as you mentioned, the ubiquitous Amazon. And so it's given the popularity of the book when it was first published, it's very easy to find.
Now, he'll also be interacting with the students. Would that be during the discussions, or?
Yeah, he'll be giving the convocation talk, but then after that, there are breakout sessions that we have. And that he will sort of be floating around to different of these sessions and sort of interacting with the students and answering some questions and offering his insights.
Tell me a little bit about how that is set up in terms of the discussion groups.
The discussion groups are designed to sort of simulate the university classroom. And so it's a fairly small group of incoming students who will be sitting down with a facilitator. The facilitators are made up of faculty members and staff members and members of the administration. President Dudley Eschbach has actually volunteered to be one of our facilitators this year. And so again, it's the idea of modeling academic discussions. The facilitators will help provide the students some historical and cultural contextualization, again, sort of help them understand the broader picture out of which the book emerged, but then model for them and sort of encourage them to understand how we have intellectual and academic discussions. That everybody's got opinions, but in academic and intellectual discussions, ideas always have to be supported by facts. And so we can't just rely on, well, I believe this, so it must be true, but to really get students to think about how they think, how they interact with each other, how they interact with what will be their professors in the future, and again, to really model that academic discourse.
I was thinking it also is probably a really great opportunity for them to make friends
It really is.
in that small environment.
It really is. You think about the students who are sort of thrust in to the university setting where, they might come in with some friends, but there's also a time when they are, first beginning to interact with people from on the obvious side, sort of different towns, but also different cultures, different religions, different economic classes, and to immerse them very quickly in that classroom setting, to embrace that sort of diversity of belief and thought, I think is a really valuable thing to just kind of get them going even before their first class starts.
Yeah, I think it's just a terrific idea. Have the students been given any other opportunities to sort of immerse themselves in this book?
Yeah, in addition to being sent the book, students are given a sort of supplementary reading list, and so there's a number of other books. Some are more historical.
Oh, that relate to this book.
Definitely.
Okay.
Or at least relate to sort of refugee experiences. They've also been given a list of films and documentaries that are sort of about the refugee experience.
Oh, I want that list.
Well, we can certainly get that
Thank
for you. And so the idea is hopefully that they, again, in terms of doing academic work, look beyond just the text, see sort of what is going on around it. There's also what we have is the New Student Reader Essay Prize, where students are asked, they're not required, but to submit a short essay responding to one of a number of prompts that the committee has provided them. And so we get these essays. I believe the number for this year is 22. We evaluate them in the way that academic writing is evaluated, based on clarity of thought and quality of prose, quality of argumentation and citation. And the winner of that essay prize will be joining the president of the university, the New Student Reader Committee, and Mr. St. John for a dinner. And so it's sort of a
that's
great
nice.
celebratory moment for that student.
Is this something that they've been asked to participate in this summer? So they'll come to school with their essays?
Yes, the essays, I believe the due date was just a couple of days ago, and so the committee is starting to look at all those essays now, and we'll be making our choice soon.
Oh, that's very interesting. Now, you mentioned briefly that he'll be speaking, the author, at Convocation,
Yes.
which is sort of the introduction to the academic community for most of these freshmen.
Definitely.
Anything else you can tell me about that event?
Well, it is sort of the welcoming ceremony for the class of 2020. And so in addition...
That's right, that's what they're going to be.
That's right, that's right. If they stay on track, that is.
Right.
And so in addition to the president's welcome, Mr. St. John will be giving a speech that is sort of connected to ideas and themes from Outcast United. Sort of on another exciting note, an SU student named Kevin Miller will be introducing Mr. St. John. He's a stellar student in nursing and is one of the top players on the SU soccer team.
That's appropriate. That's great. Now, every year when you select this book, what's the process?
Typically, we begin with a list of about 20 or 25 books, and these have been nominated by faculty members, staff members, members of the administration, even students will nominate books. And we go through that list, and we sort of have a set of criteria that we're looking for, cost of the book, length of the book, again, the readability for first-year students, but also the quality of the book, the academic and intellectual rigor of the book, the quality of the prose. And so we typically will try to whittle that number down to a tight 3 or 4. And at that point, everyone on the committee gets reading. So we take the time, we read each one of these books closely, sort of considering these criteria. And then we make our recommendations to the president and the executive staff. And they make the final call based on our recommendations, and that's how the book is chosen.
That's it. Well, I think you did a good job this year.
Well, thank you.
Because it is truly a thought-provoking, eye-opening book that I'm so glad that I am reading now. So this has given me, a great opportunity to read something very different for me. From my usual bestsellers that I...
It really is. And,
Yeah.
and it's an interesting process, when the committee is sort of picking these books, that it's a large committee and a very diverse committee, and so there are a lot of opinions, sort of very strong beliefs about this book is better than that book, but it's a really very smooth process. And I'd like to take this moment to thank all the members of the committee, and especially to the co-chair, Dr. LaWanda Dawkins, who is the Associate Dean of Students.
And it just sounds like an awful lot of work goes into making this selection. I just think you did a terrific job this year. But have you started looking into next year's book yet?
We have. We've whittled it down to the tight 3, and 3 really very, very different kinds of books. I haven't made the final choice yet,
Okay.
but I can say that my choice and the choice of a good number of the members of the committee is a novel, and it's written by one of America's greatest living authors, although I would say that she is amongst one of the greatest living or dead authors. And it's a novel that deals in a lot of ways with issues of race and inclusivity and sort of cultural conflict. And for me, I think a book like that is really important. There's a lot of discussions.
All I can think of is To Kill a Mockingbird.
Well, yeah, no, it's not that one.
It's
It's
not.
not that one. But I think it's really important. There are a lot of discussions going on campuses across the country about issues of race and representation on college campuses, and that SU has really been trying to sort of engage in a lot of those conversations. And I think a book, a novel like the one that I'm thinking of, will really help get these incoming first-year students not only aware of some of those discussions, but sort of critically involved in those discussions, so that when they get here, they are more fully prepared to actually really engage in those dialogues. They're essential conversations that are going on right now. And I think it's important to bring all of the student body into it. And that might seem sort of overwhelming, but I think that's part of the responsibility of being a college student.
I think it's a great introduction to college. And it's obviously worked for 11 years, so congratulations for that.
Well, thank you.
And I can't wait to see what next year's is. I hope you'll hint to me afterwards.
I will give you the secret hint. Just keep it to yourself.
I sure will. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I so appreciate you being
Of
here,
course.
Dr. Wood, and telling us all about it. And I encourage our listeners to read this book and attend the event and listen to the author speak about, with his own words, about why he wrote this book.
We would love to have any and all come see us.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
For those of you who haven't read Outcasts United, it really is an inspirational book about what can be accomplished when people from different backgrounds come together. And now, Here are some of the events happening at the university in August and September. I'd like to thank my guest, SU English Department Chair and new Student Reader Committee Co-Chair, Dr. Adam Wood. And a big welcome to all the new students participating in this program. As for the thousands of others returning to SU this fall, welcome back. Wishing you an enjoyable and successful academic year. I'm Susan Purnell, and this has been Salisbury University on the Air. Thank you for watching.